If you like God, subscribe in this video. It's free, and comment I love God. In the beginning, when the world was still in the process of taking shape, the vast oceans lay in their mysterious depths. It was in this expanse, untouched and uncharted, that God turned his divine attention. From the heart of the waters he called forth life, breathing into the abyss, and from this breath Leviathan was born. This creature was not just any sea beast. It was a testament to the supreme power of God, a creature that embodied the vast, untamable force of the oceans themselves. With its serpentine form and eyes that glimmered with the wisdom of the seas, Leviathan roamed the waters with unimaginable strength. Its roar reverberated through the heavens, declaring the dominion of the Creator over all things. Yet, despite its grandeur, a question loomed. Why would God, in his perfect creation, allow such a force to exist, one so powerful it might one day disrupt his perfect balance? Leviathan, magnificent in its might, was not merely a creature of power, but a symbol of God's unmatched authority over the natural world. It was both a reflection of his glory and a living paradox. Its immense power could not go unchecked. As the oceans roared with the movement of this creature, the other beings of the deep recognized its dominance. But the question remained: how could such a force, so magnificent, coexist within the delicate balance that God had so carefully crafted? The raw power of Leviathan seemed to be both a blessing and a potential threat, a reminder that even in the most perfect of creations, there must always be limits. The truth that was to come would reveal that God's wisdom and justice, though beyond human understanding, were always at work, guiding and maintaining the harmony of his world. As Leviathan swam through the vast and untamed ocean, a deeper question began to stir in the heart of creation. Could such unchecked power be allowed to exist without consequence? While God, in his infinite wisdom, created the creature as a symbol of his supreme power, he also understood the necessity of balance within the universe. It was not simply a matter of power, but of purpose. Every element of creation had its place, its role to play in maintaining the grand design of the world. Leviathan, with its incredible might, was a living example of divine authority, but it also posed a dilemma. If left unchecked, its force could unravel the very balance that God had set in motion. And so, the Creator, who saw beyond the present moment, knew that even the greatest of his creations must be kept within boundaries, or else they risked disrupting the harmony of the entire world. The story of Leviathan is not just about the creation of a mighty beast, but about the profound wisdom that guides all of creation. As with any creature of immense power, there is a responsibility to maintain balance. Leviathan, though majestic and awe-inspiring, was a reminder that power without wisdom could lead to chaos. It was a reflection of the gifts we are given in life: strength, passion, and talent. But it also taught us the importance of controlling those gifts so they do not harm the greater good. God, in his wisdom, understood that sometimes the most powerful forces must be contained for the sake of the world's stability. And thus, the lesson was clear. While God gives life and strength, he also gives the wisdom to know when to act, when to hold back, and when to restore balance. As God observed the powerful Leviathan and its mate, it became clear that their existence posed a deeper question about the delicate balance of creation. Though they were magnificent, their immense power stirred the seas in ways that could lead to instability. The creatures, in all their might, threatened to upset the natural order that God had designed. It was not out of malice or cruelty that God saw the need for action, but out of a deep love for the world he had created. For God's wisdom was not just in the creation of such wondrous creatures, but in understanding when the time came to intervene. The beauty of his design was not only in the creatures he brought to life, but in the way he ensured that they would work in harmony with all the other forces of nature. Leviathan's very existence reminded us that even the greatest of strengths must be carefully guided to maintain peace in the world. This was where the divine wisdom truly shone through. God understood that Leviathan's power, while magnificent, could not be left unchallenged. The balance of creation depended on the proper containment of such forces. If left unchecked, Leviathan could easily tip the scales of the natural order, leading to chaos. Yet, the Creator had a plan, a plan not just for creation but for its preservation. His wisdom in creating and maintaining balance was evident in the way he acted to ensure that no single force could overwhelm his perfect design. Just as we are entrusted with great gifts in our lives, we too must learn the lesson of balance. Our passions, strengths, and desires must be tempered by wisdom, so that we do not allow them to become forces of destruction in our own world. God, in his infinite wisdom, knew that the time had come for action. As much as Leviathan and its mate were a testament to his creativity, he understood that the creature's power could not be allowed to grow unchecked. To preserve the order he had set in motion, he made a difficult decision, one that would restore balance and protect his creation. The fate of the Leviathan, and especially the female, had been sealed not out of anger, but as a necessary intervention. It was an act of divine justice and mercy, ensuring that the forces of chaos would not tip the universe into disorder. Through the destruction of the female Leviathan, God not only protected the natural balance but also demonstrated the importance of wisdom in the face of overwhelming power. The act was one of sorrow, yet it was necessary for the greater good, a reminder that divine wisdom often requires difficult choices. The death of the female Leviathan served as a symbol of divine justice, not as an arbitrary act, but as one that restored peace and stability to God's creation. It was a lesson for all. Sometimes, intervention is necessary to preserve the harmony of the world. In the case of the Leviathan, God's wisdom transcended mere destruction. It was an act of sacrifice for the greater good. This was not a tale of vengeance, but of restoration. As the male Leviathan continued to roam the deep, its fury was palpable. It resisted God's will, unable to accept the reality that the balance had been restored. It was then that God called upon Gabriel, his archangel, to confront this final challenge. The battle that ensued was not just physical. It was a test of wills, an ultimate confrontation between divine authority and chaos. Gabriel, armed with the strength and wisdom of God, descended into the deep waters where the male Leviathan awaited. The battle between them was unlike any other. The Leviathan, with its immense size and power, seemed unstoppable as it twisted and roared, creating waves that threatened to consume everything in its path. Gabriel, undeterred by the beast's fury, stood firm. His sword, ablaze with divine light, was an extension of God's will. This was not merely a physical contest. It was a spiritual battle for the very heart of creation. The Leviathan was not just a creature of the ocean. It symbolized the chaos that sought to unravel the divine order established by God. It was a force of destruction, a manifestation of the evil that threatened to overrun the world. Gabriel understood this, and in this understanding he found his strength. As the battle raged on, Gabriel realized that this was more than just a fight to subdue a powerful creature. It was a battle to restore the balance that God had ordained for all creation. Gabriel's flaming sword, imbued with the light and authority of God, struck with divine precision. The Leviathan's defenses weakened under the weight of God's wisdom, and its resistance faltered. The mighty roar of the creature began to quiet, and as Gabriel delivered the final blow, the beast was subdued. But this victory was not simply the defeat of a mighty creature. It was the restoration of divine order, the triumph of wisdom over chaos. In the end, it was not brute strength that brought victory but the wisdom and authority of God. Through this battle, Gabriel learned a profound lesson. True strength lies not in defeating evil but in restoring peace, in bringing order to the chaos through God's guidance. With the defeat of the male Leviathan, the ocean began to calm, and the storm that had once raged so violently through the waters settled into peaceful stillness. Gabriel, though victorious, stood with a deeper understanding of the nature of the battle. The victory was not simply about overcoming the beast. It was about restoring the divine harmony that had been disturbed. The forces of chaos, symbolized by Leviathan, would always be present in creation, but they would never again have the power to overwhelm the world. God's wisdom had prevailed, ensuring that the forces of destruction would always be subject to his greater plan. Gabriel's triumph was not just about defeating a creature. It was a demonstration of the power of divine order over the forces of chaos. This victory brought with it a profound revelation. Chaos, though powerful and disruptive, was never meant to destroy God's creation. It was meant to be understood and contained. In this moment, Gabriel realized that the true strength of the Creator lay not in the ability to destroy but in the wisdom to restore balance and harmony. The battle against Leviathan had been a lesson in understanding the forces that shape the world and in learning how to navigate them. As Gabriel stood victorious, the deeper truth became clear. No force, no matter how mighty, could ever truly triumph over God's divine order. It was through God's wisdom that creation was held together, and it was through His wisdom that peace was restored. As the waters calmed and the echoes of battle faded, Gabriel reflected on the deeper lessons of the conflict with Leviathan. This was not merely the defeat of a creature, but the reaffirmation of God's sovereignty and wisdom over all things. The chaos symbolized by Leviathan would always exist, lurking in the depths of creation, but it would never be allowed to unravel the order that God had so carefully put in place. Through Gabriel's victory, the balance of the world had been restored. Gabriel realized that his role as a servant of God was not to simply defeat evil, but to ensure that God's will was done, to maintain the peace that had been set into motion from the beginning. It was a victory not just of strength, but of understanding, discernment, and wisdom. This victory was a reminder to all who witnessed it that even the greatest forces of chaos and destruction must ultimately submit to God's divine plan. The lesson was clear. When we face challenges in our own lives, when chaos seems to overwhelm us, we must remember that true strength lies in trusting God's wisdom. Just as Gabriel stood firm in the face of Leviathan's fury, so too must we stand firm in the face of life's struggles, knowing that God's guidance will always lead us to victory. The story of Leviathan teaches us that while chaos may rise, it can never overcome the wisdom and power of the Creator. When we align ourselves with God's divine will, we, too, can restore peace and balance to our lives, no matter the chaos that surrounds us. As the story of Leviathan unfolds, we are reminded of a profound truth about God's creation. Everything has its place, and every force in the world must align with His divine order. The chaos brought by Leviathan, though mighty and threatening, was never meant to destroy God's plan, but to challenge us to recognize His wisdom. The battle was not just about the defeat of a powerful creature, but about the restoration of balance, a call to understand that every struggle we face in life is an opportunity to turn to God's wisdom. Like Leviathan, we all possess strengths and passions that can either build or destroy, depending on how we choose to use them. The challenge is not to suppress these forces, but to learn how to harness them with the wisdom of God. In our own lives, we often encounter moments of chaos, times when things seem out of control, when our strengths or desires threaten to overwhelm us. But just as God intervened to restore order in the battle with Leviathan, He offers us the wisdom to navigate the storms of our own lives. The victory over Leviathan is not just the end of a battle, but a beginning, a reminder that with God's wisdom, we are equipped to face any challenge. It teaches us that true strength is not in defeating our enemies or conquering the chaos, but in restoring balance through trust in God's guidance. In this way, we can bring peace to the storms of our lives, knowing that the same wisdom that guided Gabriel in the depths of the ocean is available to us, leading us to victory. As we reflect on the story of Leviathan, we see that it is not merely a tale of a fierce sea creature or a battle fought between good and evil. It is a story of divine wisdom, a reminder that no matter how great the chaos may seem, there is always a greater plan at work, one that is guided by God's wisdom. The forces of destruction may rise, but they will never overwhelm the order that God has set in place. Just as Leviathan's power was subdued by divine wisdom, we are called to rely on that same wisdom in our own lives, trusting that God will guide us through every trial and challenge. It is through this wisdom that we find not only peace but the strength to face life's difficulties with confidence. The victory over Leviathan is ultimately a call to align ourselves with God's divine plan. It is a reminder that our struggles, though daunting, are never in vain when we trust in God's guidance. Just as Gabriel stood firm in his mission, knowing that God's wisdom would lead him to victory, we too must stand firm in our faith, trusting that the wisdom of the Creator will carry us through. When we face our own battles, whether in our relationships, our work, or our personal challenges, we can draw strength from the knowledge that with God's wisdom, no force of chaos can stand against us. The story of Leviathan teaches us that the path to peace lies not in our own power but in the wisdom of God, who has the strength to restore balance and guide us to victory. As we close the chapter on the story of Leviathan, we are reminded of the profound truth that God's wisdom is greater than any force we may face in life. The defeat of Leviathan was not just the end of a mighty battle, but the restoration of divine order to the universe. It teaches us that no matter how overwhelming the chaos may appear, God's will always prevail. Just as he demonstrated his authority over the Leviathan, he offers us the wisdom and strength to overcome the storms in our own lives. When we face struggles, we are reminded that the real victory comes not from defeating the forces of chaos, but from restoring balance through God's divine wisdom. So, as you reflect on this story, consider how God's wisdom has worked in your own life. Are you trusting in his guidance to restore balance when chaos arises? Just as Gabriel stood firm in the wisdom of God, we are called to stand firm in our faith, knowing that we too can overcome any challenge when we align ourselves with God's divine plan. Let us continue to seek his wisdom, apply it to our daily lives, and trust that no force of chaos can ever triumph over the peace and order that God has set in motion. In this wisdom, we find not only strength but also the peace to face whatever may come our way.